Howdy once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher. I'm here this morning with a video on how to install these small Banggood brass flyball governors on a model steam engine. Now be sure and watch the previous video. I'll put a little clip of that in the following scene here so that you can go back and look at that if you haven't already seen that. So by popular demand, I'm going to mount one of those governors on one of my current engines that I made not too long ago. Rather than make an engine from scratch, we'll just retrofit one and see how it goes. So let's have a little fun today. And tips number 564 is the recent video where I talked about these little governors. This is the little steam engine that I decided to retrofit, and the decision was totally arbitrary because I've got a bunch of engines, but I'm trying to scale it so it's about the same and to make it easy on myself because this is strictly an experiment. It may well not work and then all is for naught. But it uses one of my little 3-inch lead flywheels. You've seen this run in other videos. It's a great running little engine. The bore is 5/8, the stroke is 3/4. Now the question here is that will there be enough steam or airflow through the little governor to make this thing run or to regulate it as I would like to. And remember, the purpose of the governor is to keep an engine at constant speed regardless of the load. Then I also had to make a decision on which governor to use. Remember that this one has a thread on the bottom that'll screw right in an engine. This one is more or less a bracket. And it seemed like this would be a logical one, but this boss is in the way. And I even considered remaking the entire cylinder because I do have a couple of these original cylinders in stock and probably could have milled the boss off and mounted this one on that flat surface. However, I'm not in the mood for all that extra work because it's almost like making another engine, this being the most complicated part of an engine. So I am going to use this one. The inlet port is a 1/8 inch pipe thread. So that's just a standard little air nipple. But the fitting that was on this governor, and I've already modified this off camera, but look at how small it was. I took that off of the governor, that's the original. And in fact, even though this thing's made in China, this is 1/4 inch, but it's 40 threads per inch. It's just tiny. I do not have a tap or a die that size, and probably nobody does, except at that factory. And you can see how much smaller that is. Also note how tiny the actual hole is. So what to do? So I was talking to my brother who's in a nursing home in Cody, Wyoming, but his mind is still quite sharp, and he said, well, you fool, why don't you just go ahead and solder a new fitting on there? So that's exactly what I did, and I took one of these, faced it off so it was nice and clean, got rid of the nipple part, and I soldered this directly onto the bottom of this globe valve. And I put some, what did I use? Graphite, so that the solder would not contaminate or draw up onto the good material. Now when I do a little job like that, you know what I like to use? I like to use this tiny little solder that's 20 thousandths in diameter, but it's just so easy to control. That's rosin core, and I didn't even know they made it this small. This of course came from you know where. In order to align the two fittings, I made this little tool out of 1/8 inch steel. But look at how small I had to turn it down. So that's the actual diameter, that's why I'm showing you this, the actual diameter of the little pinhole, it's almost a pinhole, that allows the steam to pass through this valve. So you can see that there just will not be much volume at all. I sure do like the looks of this, don't you? Also, I was very careful when I soldered that, such that I would be able to get the orientation that I desired. I love an Armstrong wrench, don't you? so I can bring this around to the orientation I desire, and it will tighten up. And by orientation, what I mean is that I want this little shaft here for the belt pulley to be parallel to the main crankshaft. And it is, or reasonably so. Now the trouble begins. Before I waste too much time making things, I like to look through what I already have here in stock. And I did have this little pulley, but I don't believe it's going to work, but it's already 3/16 that it would fit on here. But in order to use that, I would have to move this pulley way out, and it's almost at its maximum now. Plus I would need a spacer in there because now I have this movement, which I do not want. So, and this is the pulley that I will use. It's that nice spring material, and I can cut that off to length. You've seen that before, and thank you to whoever gave that to me. But I think what I'm going to have to do here is to make a pulley that will fit in here. Now there's not a whole lot of room in there, and again I won't be able to use this one. It already has a set screw in it too. This is 3/16. So first of all, I can move the flywheel over just a little bit. You can see there's a gap in there of about 16, so that gives me a 1/16 of an inch. Also there's room to move it here because I made this well wide enough at the time. Am I talking too much? I did have 3 cups of coffee, by the way. Alright, so I'm going to have to take the flywheel off. Remember, it's lead, and I will face off, oh, I don't know how much here, but so that I have a little room to put my pulley in, and then I have to make a pulley. I think I'll make the pulley first. Let's do that. I'm going to digress. Advance your video 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this, but looking back here, do you remember a few years ago in a video where I made some little fittings? These are brass castings given to me by one Mr. J. Nelson, on a tree, by the way. Little elbows and so on. And I don't know where the one is that I actually finished to show you. Remember, there was little blueprints and everything. See, I don't always know what I did in what video or when, because that was a long time ago. And remember that I made over 1,000 videos over a 10-year period, and plus about 200 or more in my video courses. And let me illustrate that. And this is why I sometimes repeat myself or do not know where to find things any more than you do. I'm doing this just as an illustration. This book has 1,000 pages. 1,003 pages up to the index here. Alright, I've made over 1,000 videos. So just consider that how long it would take just to page through this and read the title on each page. So when I have 1,000 videos in my catalog, you know, I don't know what is where. I do have them all down on paper, but I have to do a search, and that's what you need to do sometimes too, do a search in my videos or whoever's videos you're looking at to find these videos. I do have a lot of watch lists, and you can check through some of those too. Alright, now let's truly make that pulley. This is 3/4 inch round aluminum. I won't show all this because otherwise it would be a 3-hour video. Did you note that I painted my big 4-inch Colombian vise? This is a 440 tap. Okay, there's the fit that I'm getting. I went 150 thousandths deep with just a 60-degree tool. Now, will that grip? Will it work? I think so. There's not much load on it. Now, again, this is 3/4 diameter. How did I arrive at that? It was arbitrary and capricious. I do not know what ratio I need. This, in fact, is smaller than this. So it may be I have to make another one of a different size. I don't know. But I need to make room in here now for the pulley, so you can see that I got to take off. I'm going to take off 1/8 of an inch. And then adjust it as needed. Remember that I've got taper here on this bearing support. I milled it off on this side and on the other side, but rather than mill it off, I'd like to have extra room so I can position it as needed. Is that clear as mud? Well, there's the pulley, and it's a pretty good fit, and I can still move it from one side to the other just a little bit if I need to for alignment. And I set this pulley back to its original position here, so I got good mesh on the gears, but just a little bit of play, otherwise it binds if I put it in too tight. But you know, this pulley here has a little serration in there, and I think that this belt will grip on that, although the belt is much smaller than the groove, and the pulley on the other governor is quite different than this. I probably could interchange them if I had to, but I think this will work. And the alignment here is pretty decent between the two pulleys, but even if it was off just a little bit, the flex of this is going to be no problem. Now, I think everybody in the free world knows how these belts work, that one end is tapered and literally screws into the other end, so you can cut these off any length you want. Retaining this end, of course. Don't cut off this end and throw it away, or you have to throw the whole thing away. I'll fit that up off camera. I cut it off the length with the Kleins, worked quite well. Now, the resourceful person could also use O-rings of various sizes, if you could find the right length. You don't want too much tension here. I think this is just about right. Seems to drive all right, doesn't it? You know what, I think I'll show you this too. I do have this O-ring kit by Loctite, but I've had it so long that I'm sure all the chemicals are dried out and ruined. Yeah, that's drier than... Anyway, in here are lengths of material here for making O-rings. Cut to length, square it off, even a little jig I think to square it off properly, and then glue it together, and that would work also if the glue joint didn't fail. I mean, there's really no pressure against it, but that's what it looks like. I actually have never used this. You know, a month ago when I made that video on these governors, I was lamenting and had all the trouble varying the speed. Remember that? Using a Dremel was insanely fast. So, you know, now I'm laying in bed, I'm thinking, well, you got this beautiful DeWalt lithium, 2 speed ranges, variable speed down here, you fool. Why didn't you use that? I must have had one heck of a mental block that day. Let me put it in the other range and we'll have balls out. Well, I've got some more plumbing to do because I just got kind of a temporary setup here with some vinyl tube and a piece of wire. And it's not a proper nipple to even do that, but let's have a test run here. And I would like a drum roll, if you please. That's 4 pounds of pressure. Let's run our balls out. Time for a little maintenance already. 2 different times the belt splice unscrewed, so I put on some of Horror Freight's finest. And the little oil to all the moving parts. I love this little oil cup, don't you? And then to every one of the joints, and there's quite a few of them. A little bit on the gears. Now at this time I am unable to tell whether the governor is functioning in regards to what it's actually supposed to do, because I am imposing a minor load on the flywheel right now, and I can't really tell whether the governor is feeding more air to the engine or not. I would need a prony brake to do that, and a prony brake so sensitive that it would have to be rated in ergs. Now I made a video quite a while ago, and I'll put a little clip here of that, on a prony brake that I made for a hit and miss engine. I know you didn't see it because no one watched it, and it's quite a while ago, but check that out should you be in the mood. Now watch the little thread tied around the valve, and you will see it move ever so slightly. So we know that it's opening the valve. I just think the orifice is too small to admit the amount of air and or steam that would be required to maintain the speed. Now leave comments on this if you would, but this governor, of course made in China, we don't really know who designed it or why, or is it just ornamental, but it seems to function in regards to what you would think it was supposed to do, but we don't know what the rating is on it, the capacity and all of the engineering figures, in fact if there are any. And possibly I have this on an engine that's way too big, because again it's a 5/8 bore. Perhaps we need it on an engine that only has a 1/4 inch bore. I probably won't carry it any farther than this at that point, but put that in the comments what you think. Also, put in the comments whether you think that this governor is in proportion to the engine. I think, personally, that the governor looks too big. That is, it would look better on a larger engine, but yet it couldn't possibly control the speed on a real large engine. And I pointed that out to you, that the orifice in here on the valve, it's just tiny. Now let's take another look at that valve move up and down from another view with a close-up. I cranked the air pressure up to 15 or 18 pounds of pressure. Now watch the little piece of string here. Again, that's the valve. Watch it move up and down as I impose a load with my finger on the flywheel. Eureka! Eureka! I just made a major discovery. You can discount much of what I said in the last few minutes in regards to whether or not this is functioning. With the air pressure cranked up to 15 to 18 pounds, it just made all the difference in the world on how that governor is reacting to the load of my fingers. Again, I don't know how much of a load is that, but I can feel it. It's enough friction to where I feel heat, although it doesn't hurt. Alright, now watch and maybe listen. You might be able to hear it too. And watch the balls. You know, it's almost barking a little bit like a big old case steam engine, isn't it? Watch the centrifugal balls. And at this point I have paid absolutely no attention to any possible adjustment there would be with the spring, nor do I intend to. I really wish I had a little prony brake now to test this, but now this is remarkable. Tell your friends about this, maybe even your enemies. I will put this on Instagram too, some of you watch that, but the Chinese engineer that designed these, probably the same man, was brilliant and ingenious, because this thing does work. It's fun to play with. probably you're not going to see it anymore. I don't think I'll retrofit this, but you never know. Depends on how much time I have. This took 3 hours to mount it. I thought maybe it would take a lot more. That includes making the pulley and all of that other stuff. But of course I had the engine to start with. What did you think of this device? By device, I mean governor. I love it. I absolutely love it. And this is tubalcain saying so long for now. These model steam governors are available at Banggood, so look them up if you're in the mood. They're $46.